Welcome to WTF Fantasy Football. Jim Day, Tony Cincotta here. Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, every single week of the fantasy football season. If you haven't been here, where the hell you been? But it only took you 3 weeks to figure it out. Jim, you got to give them credit. 3 weeks to figure out life. That's pretty good.
Well, I'll take it at this point. Anybody that's figuring it out and listening, I appreciate them doing that. So thanks all for watching, and let us know how you think we do. So we don't want to do that. And before we really get into everything, I want to say, you mentioned it last week, but the Fantasy Football Talk group on Facebook is just amazing.
Yep.
I can't believe it. I started, I posted something about this today, but I started it just for me and a couple of friends to talk about our drafts. And, it's only been alive for about a month. And today we passed 550 registered users. And I think that's amazing. There's a ton of new topics come up every single day. Everybody's being civil, some good information being transferred back and forth. And I got to say, I'm really liking it. How about you?
You know what the crazy thing is that this chat room, unlike any other one I've ever been, you don't have any negative things, and you don't have the internet trolls that are so prevalent, I think, across most chat rooms, right? I've never seen a non-productive thing there yet. Usually there's a couple things, and maybe you'll have a guy that'll, start deleting people and kicking people out. Jim, 550 people. How many people have you kicked out?
Just one.
Really?
There was one guy that was being a little bit of an idiot, so I had to get rid of him. But that's the only one. And again, everybody's been being civil, and that is one of my only rules: is be civil. Because, like you say, most chat rooms, most forums, they get so bad, and people dissing people for asking questions, things like that. I just won't have it, and I'll give each person one chance to do it. I'll warn them. If they do it again, they're gone. But we haven't seen any of that, and I love it.
No, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of quality players there, too. You get guys in high-stakes leagues. You get guys that play in 200 leagues in there. And then you get guys that are just new to fantasy football, and they know about us, and they know about the people in the chat room, and they ask legitimate questions. And it's great to see, back when we first started, when we played fantasy football, we had some of the similar questions, right? And it's funny to see them, 10 years in and 12 years in, people having the same questions, and it makes me think about where we used to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And that's the way I look at it. Everybody we've seen it too often. Somebody who comes in new to the game asks a basic question, and everybody's always down on him, and, oh, that's just garbage, get out of here. And you know what? We were all there once. At one point, we all had those questions. So I'm glad to see we're not seeing any of that. People are answering questions, legitimate questions, no matter what they are.
Yeah,
there he is.
Absolutely there once, right? But now you've become a big star, and you got the show every day, right? Where you become a guy giving advice to all the masses out there, and you're going to be responsible for how people win and lose their fantasy football seasons. So, Jim, let everybody know that are on YouTube right now where they can follow you the rest of the week, in case they didn't know.
Well, of course, the easiest place is on Twitter at FantasyTaz, almost always on there. And then every day, Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock, I'm on the Fantasy Football Frenzy podcast on the Fantasy Sports Network on YouTube as well. You can search Fantasy Football Frenzy on YouTube to find it. Every day, 1 to 2 with Corey Parsons and Chris Ventra. And we have some good fun on that show.
Stuff. Now, Jim, I've been doing this a long time, as have you, and we did some shows together, and I'm usually the guy that knows everything, and I never make a mistake. And I got to tell you, Jim, every once in a while when you're Catholic, you need to go to confession. I feel like tonight should be confession for me. I think I've used the wrong strategy a little bit.
Ooh, I definitely am interested in hearing this thought. Go ahead. Preach on, my son.
All right, if you're in a 6-point touchdown league for passes, right? I think no matter what the fantasy sport is, whether you're playing football, baseball, basketball, anything you're playing, when you draft a guy in the first round, second round, third round, early in the draft, or in an auction, you're going to pay top dollar, what you pay for is predictability. What you pay for is predictability. Guys, every week they're going to guarantee the same points and they'll lead points every week. That's what you pay for. So I'm all for picking Aaron Rodgers earlier in leagues than most people will say, wait on quarterbacks, wait on quarterbacks. You want to pick Aaron Rodgers, you go ahead and pick him in the second round. But I got a caveat to that. I think in best ball leagues, the quarterback and picking the best player is less of importance. Because say Aaron Rodgers in a 6-point touchdown league, I say he's 30 points a week, right? 300 yards, that'll get me 12 points. 3 touchdowns, 18 points. So right around 30 points a week. If I have 3 quarterbacks, though, on a roster, I'm probably going to get 24, 25 points every week if I wait to take Phillip Rivers, Blake Bortles, and Matt Ryan. So I don't need to have that earlier pick. So I think when people are out there in the leagues this year, I think there's a different strategy on the quarterback position when it comes to best ball leagues to regular leagues where you have to put a lineup every week. Yeah, give me Aaron Rodgers every time, second, third round, if you're going to be in a league where you have to put on a quarterback every week. But if I have 3 quarterbacks, I think I'm going to get 25, 26 points regardless. One of them will step up, and you don't need to spend a second or third round pick on a quarterback in a best ball league.
Well, absolutely. And here's my theory with best ball leagues when you're drafting in them. It really comes down to each position. The better your starters are, if you get 2 stud running backs, let's say early on, then you don't have to draft as many running backs going through the draft. If you draft 2 stud wide receivers to start, you don't have to draft too many wide receivers to make up that difference. But if you start off with 2 mediocre wide receivers, then you have to draft more at that position. So the better your starters, the less you have to draft at that position. Now, if you draft Aaron Rodgers, you only really need another quarterback. You don't really need 3 in a best ball, but you can wait and draft those 3 and still get the same or almost the same production as you would with Aaron Rodgers and only one other. So the better your starters, the less you actually have to draft at that position. The worse your starters, the more you draft.
I agree with that, but what about the scenario in the best ball format? So there's 2 scenarios here. So in the best ball format, if you agree, Aaron Rodgers, I only need to get 1 more quarterback, and I'm all good. I'm all good with 2. But do you pick DeShone Kizer in the last 2 rounds there, or do you just go with 2 quarterbacks? Because Aaron Rodgers, the one thing you can say that it's a negative, the only thing that's a negative is the injury history.
No, and that's right. Normally I would take a late round flyer on somebody. There's a lot of choices out there with the rookies that may possibly start, possibly being available late. There's so much depth at quarterback, you could still do that. So I wouldn't say no. Most best ball leagues have more rounds to them than a normal league anyway because of the injuries and things like that. People getting cut before the season starts or in the season in some cases. So you usually have more rounds to play around with. So normally even if with the Rodgers, I would grab 3 because we have the extra rounds, but you don't have to.
Green Bay, it's been a fantasy haven the last few years, right? And I got to ask the question, Randall Cobb, story out there today, was being shopped around. Who is playing wide receiver other than Devontae Adams for the Green Bay Packers?
Well, they got some young talent there, no doubt. Valdez-Scantling has looked good in the preseason. Geronimo Allison is somebody they've been talking up as a number 3 all along. They got the bounce-around kid, Jake Kumaro, who's been playing really good in preseason games so far there. So I think they have enough depth to cover it and get away from his contract.
That's the whole thing is like, you know what? I want a Green Bay wide receiver, right? And I got to tell you, when you look at Devontae Adams and he's going early in the second round, mid to the second round, who is the next guy there? And what do we do with a guy like Montgomery, right? The guy that's been the running back position classification for a lot of people. It wouldn't shock me if he plays some wide receiver this year. It wouldn't shock me if he plays running back this year. What do you do with those wide receivers, and who is the guy you're targeting? I mean, more and more, I was afraid of Jimmy Graham 3 months ago because he's always been hurt. Green Bay never really featured the tight end except for at the goal line. But more and more I look at Jimmy Graham, the more and more I'm liking him.
I love when people say Jimmy Graham, he's always hurt. You know what? He doesn't miss games. He may be nicked up, he may be bruised up, but he's on the field. He hasn't, I think he missed, what, one game in the last 4 years? I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me. But it's ridiculous that people just think he's always hurt. He's nicked up, but he's on the field. He plays all the time. So, I don't believe that. I like Jimmy Graham this year. I think he landed in a great spot with Rodgers. I know Corey Parson doesn't think much of him because he doesn't think Aaron Rodgers uses his tight end. You know what? He's going to use Jimmy Graham, especially in the red zone. We actually have a bet on the show that I said Graham gets over 7 touchdowns. He said he gets under the bottle of good scotch to the winner. So we shall see. I'm pretty sure I got that one in the bag, though.
Well, I'll tell you what, 3 out of the last 6 years, we've seen at least 7 touchdowns from Jimmy Graham. In 2016, which a lot of us think was a down year for Jimmy Graham, he actually had 65 catches, 6 touchdowns, and 923 yards receiving for a tight end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think he's going to have a monster year. I like him a lot. I've been grabbing him a lot. So I agree with you. I think he's going to be the number 2 target on this team. I think Geronimo Allison is going to step up if they do get rid of Cobb. And then I think the other guys are going to get some, shots here and there as well. But, I mean, really what it does is cement Devontae Adams as a clear number 1 receiver this year, somebody who could easily catch 12 touchdowns.
All right, for Jim's point, for all you people out there that are watching saying, Jim says, hey, Graham's not an injury guy. People think it is, but perception and reality are different things. Jimmy Graham, 2010, played 15 games. 2011, 16. 2012, 15. 2013, 16. 2014, 16. 2015 was the one season he had injuries, 11, 2016, 16, and 2017, 16. Jim, there's 16 games in the NFL season, and when I look at Jimmy Graham's played 16 games in all but 3 of his seasons since 2010.
Yeah, no, right. But, again, it comes down to perception. People see him on the injury report a lot, and I know that. He gets nicked up. He has his bumps and bruises, but he's on the field. And people get that perception because they see him on the injury report that he's not going to play, that he's missed so many games. And that's just wrong. It's just an incorrect statement.
I agree. Now, Jim, I got to ask you. You come out strong on Jimmy Graham. Are you comfortably drafting him as the 4th tight end?
I took him the other day in the 6th round. So, yeah, I would. I'm not saying I do it all the time because there's some deep tight ends I really like this year. But, yeah, I have definitely done it. I did it just the other night in a money league. I took him in the middle of the 6th round. I think that's great value.
Real quick, who do you like better, Ingram of the New York Giants or Jimmy Graham?
I like Jimmy Graham a little more this year because, again, I think the touchdowns are really going to be his strong point. I love Ingram. I love that he's a Giant. I think he's going to be a great Giant for a long time. But there's so many mouths to feed in that offense this year with Barkley there, with Odell Beckham back. You got Shepard on the other side. I think Ingram has a great season. I just think Jimmy Graham is going to have a little better this year.
Jim, real quick, this is nothing I planned for. It just came in my mind.
Those are the best things when it comes to you, Tony. Those are the best things.
When it comes to best ball formats, you talked about all the extra rounds. At any point, do you draft Dez Bryant?
Oh, heck yeah. I'll take a shot on Dez, and I have taken a shot on Dez. I mean, the talk today was possibly that he may go to the Patriots. Now, the Patriots are coming out and saying, no, we don't want him. We don't want him. But, of course, that's what they say.
It was interesting what the Patriots actually said. The Patriots said, right, we don't want him right now is what they said.
Right, and that's the whole thing with Dez. I don't think Dez is signing until preseason is done. He doesn't want to do preseason. He doesn't want to have anything to do with that. So I don't think we see him at all then. But I think he signs with somebody before the start of the season, I think, or at least week 1, week 2. So I have taken some shots on him just for giggles.
You listen to WTF Fantasy Football with Jim Day, Tony Cincotta, every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Catch us live on YouTube, or you can watch during the week. Jim, I got a young guy I want to ask you about. Before I get to him, though, I'm going to ask you about an old guy because we're old, so we can fit in. Adrian Peterson tries out with the Redskins. He's going to play this week in the first half. He got a contract. What are we doing here with Adrian Peterson?
Oh, man, I'm not doing much of anything. Look, I know he's Adrian Peterson. I know what he's done in the past, but it is the past. He's going to be the starter for Washington at this point because, let's face it, nobody else really likes anything there. But the only Washington running back I even want any stock of is Chris Thompson, and that's because all I play is PPR leagues. I think Chris Thompson has a solid year in PPR. But Peterson, I think he's done. I think this was a stupid move by Washington. He showed last year he really didn't have anything left in the tank. 4 of his last 7 games he played last year, he averaged less than 2 yards a carry. You know what? I could fall forward and get 2 yards a carry. That's just ridiculous to me. I really thought, and I had mentioned this on the Frenzy before all this happened, was I thought they would be reaching out to Odell Darkwa, who I thought looked really good for the Giants last year. I was kind of annoyed the Giants didn't keep him. Just shows that they really like Wayne Gallman a lot more than we thought they did. So
I'll tell you what, William Darkwa, I believe, came in for a trial with the Redskins and didn't keep him.
No, they didn't, but it really makes sense. And somebody else actually brought this up to me. I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, but it really made a lot of sense. Is that by signing Adrian Peterson, you sell more tickets, you sell more jersey, you do more on the business side than you're actually going to do on the field side.
So what are you saying? Daniel Snyder's a businessman?
We've seen that from Daniel Snyder way too often to disregard that being the main reason he signed this guy.
All right. I'm going to ask a question, and this question, people, pay attention. This can win or lose you leagues right now. What are we doing with Rashad Penny and Chris Carson, and who are we drafting and when there? Story came out today. Rashad Penny's gained 16 pounds since the combine. That tells me the guy's hurt. He gained 16 pounds. This guy's not a football player or doesn't know that it's a business and this is his life yet. And that Chris Carson's going to get every opportunity, even if Penny's healthy. Because all the reports are, Penny will be back week 1. Now I'm thinking it don't even matter.
Well, it doesn't matter. Penny, I like Penny. I think eventually he gets there, but maybe he just doesn't realize it yet. Maybe it takes him a little longer. But Carson is the guy right now. If you want to draft the starting running back for Seattle, Carson is the guy you have to grab. He's got the job. He's looked good doing it. The coaches are raving about him. It is the thing. Penny, by missing all his time because of the injured hand, is really falling far behind because the one thing we knew he had to work on, the thing that he had to be on the field to work on, was blitz pickup, learning who to watch for, who to pick up as a running back, and he just wasn't doing very well, as you saw in the first preseason game, just whiffing on that one linebacker. So, that is a big problem for him. I think eventually he gets it in a dynasty league. He's your guy to own, I think. But I think for this year, right now, if you're drafting the starting running back for Seattle, it's got to be Chris Carson.
Jim, I got something I gotta look at right now. So I'm going to ask you a question that I need you to elaborate on for a minute or two.
Okay.
You ready? You're unprepared for this, so this is your first skill as a broadcaster here. You asked a question in Fantasy Football Talk, which people can find on Facebook. Since preseason has started, based on the play, who have you changed your mind on who you're drafting? Jim, I don't know if you've actually changed your mind on people, but who are some of the people that were mentioned on that topic?
Well, there was definitely quite a few, and now, of course, I got to go check it out, to be honest. But there's a lot of people. I mean, Christian McCaffrey was definitely one of them. People are really liking what they're seeing from him in preseason, and coaches talk about him getting so many carries and so many touches. Starts to look like it may come to fruition. We know that they have a good backup there, but doesn't matter. McCaffrey, if they use him a lot in the early downs and then also use him in the passing downs where we know they will, this is a kid that easily is got a chance to crack the top 5 running backs if he touches the ball 300 times or even close to that. He's got that kind of power. He's got that kind of speed. He can do that. So it definitely would be interesting to see that come to fruition because I like him. I like him a lot. I've been grabbing him a lot in drafts lately because, again, he just looks really strong. He looks like he's really going great guns. And, the only thing I think that deters him now at this point is whether or not he can stay healthy. And I think he will. The other guy that I think that most people are really down on and really has changed a lot of minds is Ronald Jones in Tampa Bay. People really liked him coming in. They thought he was going to be the lead back in Tampa Bay. And right now he can't even beat out Peyton Barber. Nothing against Peyton Barber. He's an NFL running back. That means he's good. I don't care what people say. That means he's good. He's on a team. He's making money playing football. That means he's good. He's better than you or I. But the fact is, he's just an ordinary running back at this level. And Ronald Jones right now looks lost. He doesn't seem to understand the concepts. He's running, east and west much more than he's running north and south. And I think a lot of people have changed their minds on him.
Yeah, most people on Facebook are negative. No matter what we post, right, it's always a negative post on Facebook. I actually have a positive, Jim. There's no way in hell I was drafting Saquon Barkley in round 1, playing for the New York Giants, a rookie that's never played a game, with an offensive line that's been suspect, but thought was improved during the offseason. The guy's the real deal. I have no problem even considering him at pick number 3 based on how I feel like he'll be in that offense. I have no problem going Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, Saquon Barkley. And I'll even go this far. If you're the type of guy that thinks, football's a tough sport, Le'Veon Bell's missed all of training camp, Le'Veon Bell's in the final year of contract, and you don't want to pick him because of that, I have no problem picking Saquon Barkley at 2.
No, I like it. I agree. I think Barkley's going to easily have a chance at 300 touches. And, one thing we did see last year is that every single running back that touched the ball 300 times was a top 10 running back. And there was only 6 of them. So it's not many that actually get that opportunity. Barkley's going to get that opportunity. He's going to be a 20 carry a game guy. He's going to get, 5, 6, 7 balls a game thrown at him easily.
Yeah.
So this is a kid that's going to do it all. The hammy injury has got to be a little disquieting there because you just hate seeing hammy injuries on young kids. But the fact that he came back to practice today, even in a limited fashion, is a good sign. There was some video online of him running some routes, and he looked like he could make the cuts on both legs. So it didn't look so bad. I'm definitely thinking we'll see him in week 1, ready to go. We won't see him before then because the Giants aren't going to play him in preseason for no reason at this point. Sit him down. You don't need to do it. He'll be on the field come week 1, and I'm with you. I know I'm a Giants fan and all that, but I wouldn't care. If he was on any other team, I'd say the same thing. This kid is an elite talent, and it's going to show, and it's going to show early.
So I had the second pick in the draft that started yesterday, and I'll be honest with people. I took Le'Veon Bell. It came down to that was 2 players. Le'Veon Bell, do I worry about the training camp missing 4 weeks? It's the National Football League. I mean, this is a tough game. Do I worry about that, or do I take Saquon Barkley? To me, it was that. And you're right. The 7 to 8 passing attempts, to me, is the key with Barkley, where I give him the advantage over Ezekiel Elliott.
Well, that is definitely an advantage. Again, we talk a lot about this on the Frenzy, especially since Corey is such a major Dallas fan. But Ezekiel Elliott can catch. They just don't throw him the ball enough. That's just a stupid coaching move. They've said this year they're going to try and get him more involved in the passing game. And if they do, I think this kid is lights out, could easily be number 1. The thing I have with Bell, though, and again, this is not factual or in any way, it's just a bad feeling that he's trying so hard to get paid. I would not be surprised if he sits out a couple of games trying to get paid. Just because he's really trying to prove that point. He's shown us in the past he's that stupid.
Breaking news for all the people that are watching live. Ohio State head football coach Urban Meyer has been suspended for 3 games based on a situation involving one of his assistant coaches and domestic abuse. I'll tell you what, the world is a crazy place now, and I kind of feel bad for Urban Meyer with this whole situation because he's not the one that abused anyone, and I think he tried to do the right thing, and I think it's ended up being a crazy thing. But Urban Meyer, the Ohio State coach, suspended for 3 games.
I agree with you. That's ridiculous. Like you said, he did try to do it. As far as I know, I'm not saying I know 100% of the story or anything like that, but from what I've seen, he did try to tell the right people, and maybe they weren't having none of it. So for it to bounce back on him, I think is just stupid.
It's crazy world we live in. But Urban Meyer, a guy that's suspended for 3 games, we'll see what happens there. Now, we just talked about Saquon Barkley, and I agree. He's never going to step on the field again in the preseason. One guy that's going to go the whole preseason without stepping on the field, Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones. Now, people seem to be disgruntled with Julio over the last couple of seasons. Now, he's the type of guy, this is what I feel, and this is I don't have anything facts, and I would kill other people for probably taking this comment. Julio's going to slide into the second round without playing a game. And I would love him in the second round, and I'd be scared to death to pick him in the first round.
I'm not scared to pick him in the first round, but you're right. He has been sliding into the second round. I'd take him in the second round any day. You know, the 3 touchdowns last year, that's an aberration. He's definitely going to regress more to his mean. I'm not saying he gets anywhere near 10 touchdowns again, but give me 6, give me 7. That's still a great improvement. And you're talking about a guy who gets 1,400 yards a season. So, you know what? I'm not afraid to take him anywhere in there. But if I get him in the second round, I am happy as hell.
So you have no problem with him not playing at all this preseason?
I really don't. He's got nothing else to prove. I'm sorry. He knows his offense. His offense knows him. There's really nothing else going on. It's not like he's on a new team with a new coach, with a new QB. These guys all know each other. They know each other well. They still get practice time. No reason in the world. I think all of these veterans, they should have their little practices on the side. None of them should step on the field in preseason.
I'm totally with you. WTF Fantasy Football, Jim Day, Tony Cincotta, talking to you every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, or right here on YouTube. You can download all week. Jim, I, as a guy, said last week, I believe it was, that, you know what, you can draft early, and if people get hurt, I pointed out David Johnson, Tom Brady got injured in the first game of the season in the past. So what does it matter if you draft early or you draft late? You still have injuries. It is what it is. And if you complain about it, you didn't know what you were talking about. Now, Jim, I found a reason that might be a negative to drafting early.
Oh, and what would that be?
If you actually play in a league that draft kickers, the kicker situation when you draft early is so unstable, unlike anything else in the world. That could be a problem. You could actually draft a team that you don't have a kicker. Now, if you have pickup in waivers during the season, you're okay. But if you're in a best ball format, the kicker could be an issue. A guy like Cairo Santos was cut by the New York Jets today. This is a guy I'm pretty sure was drafted in every league that has a best ball format already.
Yeah, I hate kickers. I hate playing in fantasy leagues that have kickers anymore, just for this reason. I mean, these guys are shuffled around like playing cards these days. And, in a best ball format, I just did a draft last week. And again, I'll be honest and say I really didn't put a lot of thought into kickers going into the draft because most of the other leagues I do don't do kickers anymore. So I was, I knew what I liked, but there was a couple guys I wasn't sure of, but didn't really have the time or the care to check into it. So there was a couple of guys I got, but then the third kicker I took in this 30-round draft was Kai Forbath. The next day he was cut. Now I do hear that he's sniffing around the Jets. Maybe the Jets will pick him up. It still might happen. It doesn't matter. But he was my number 3, so I'll live with that. But yeah, at this point, I tell everybody, if you're in a league that drafts kickers, draft a solid kicker before you draft a defense. Defenses are going to be there no matter what you do because they don't change. Kickers change all the time.
The problem is the solid kickers, right? I think there's like 12. So you got to draft one. You can't wait till the end and pick the last couple kickers if you're in the best ball format. You can do it if you're in a league where you have waiver wires and pickups because, you might lose your kicker, but someone unexpected is going to make a roster, and then you just pick him up.
Yeah, no, right. Absolutely. If you have waiver wires, especially if you have a waiver wire before the start of the season, if you drafted early, then yeah, that's not a problem. You can always make up for it. In a best ball league, like you said, you have no options. Whatever you have, you have. So that's why I tell people in best ball, draft your kickers before defense. See, everybody's out to draft the top defense, and it makes me crazy because year to year, the top defense has changed tremendously.
Every year.
Every year. Last year, of the last 2 years, 4 of the top 12 are the only teams that were in the top 10 of the position both years. Philly was the only defense in the top 5 both years. The other teams that weren't in those top 10, the other 6, weren't even in the top 12 at the position the next year after being in the top 10 the first year. So it's really predicated on touchdowns, returns, which are so hard to forecast. I don't care what you say. I've seen people grab the Jacksonville defense in the 7th round. Are you kidding me? I want to slap you in the side of your freaking head when you draft a defense in the 7th round. You make me so freaking crazy. I just want to grab your freaking neck and just ring. Don't do it. Grab 3 defenses, grab them later. It doesn't matter. Somebody's going to score enough points for you. I will say grab 3, though. You want 3. That 3rd defense is going to be in your starting lineup more than that 7th wide receiver or that 6th running back. But damn it, don't draft a defense in the 7th round.
I totally agree with you, Jim. And it's funny because it goes back to the Baltimore Ravens, right? Back in their heyday is the last time I think we've had a dominant defense for more than 2 years in a row.
Yeah, it's very unusual that it happens. Again, when you're talking about most defensive scoring being predicated on return touchdowns or defensive touchdowns, you can't forecast them. It's just unbelievably hard to try and do. Most of it's luck, just way the game flows. And some defenses get hot one year, the next year they have nothing. And to me, it's just amazing that people fall into this trap year after year.
And for all you fantasy football people out there that don't realize the Baltimore Ravens, back in the heyday, Ray Lewis was just inducted to the Hall of Fame. That means he's retired 5 years ago. And he was in this heyday probably 4 years before that. So it's been about 9, 10 years for all you people drafting fantasy defenses that early. Jim, I got to ask you, people setting up leagues, and a lot of times you have new commissioners. What is the standard for defensive scoring? Because you talked about it. It fluctuates year to year, and a lot is predicated to me on luck touchdowns, on run backs and things like that, because a sack gets you 1 or 2 points, an interception gets you 1 or 2 points, and based on the score of the game, you might get 5 points. There's not a lot of defensive points generally, but in the leagues you play, and you play a ton, what is the consensus based on defensive scoring?
Well, it's just what you said. You get your sacks, you get your interceptions or fumbles, and you get a few points for that. You get a couple of points for how many points against they've given up, but it's not even enough.
Right.
Most of the time it cuts off at like 14 points. You know how often a team is held to less than 14 points? Just not often enough to matter. And that even at 14 points, you're lucky if you get 3 points from them for that. So to me, it's just ludicrous. If you got a team that has, one of the best return men in the business, maybe that's something you look at. So back when they had Devin Hester, and he'd take a couple to the yard every year, then that makes a little bit of difference. But don't base it on what they did last year, like Jacksonville did. They were a great defense last year, no doubt. Plenty of turnovers, plenty of defensive touchdowns, but it's just not replicable every year.
Dallas is interesting. We keep hearing the Des Bryant stories about where he may end up, where he's going to end up, how he's going to go about it. But, hey, he's not there in Dallas anymore. And they got a quarterback named Dak Prescott, and they got a wide receiver in Allen Hurns, Cole Beasley. We've got Williams. Is there anybody in Dallas, the wide receiver position, that someone could take a late-round flyer on?
Well, I like Allen Hurns. I've been an Allen Hurns fan since he was in Jacksonville. I think he's definitely a guy who could score some touchdowns in this offense and, maybe catch 60, 65 balls. So I like him a lot. I think the rookie Michael Gallup is a guy who will get involved. Cole Beasley is he's a good slot receiver who At some point, they were talking about moving him to the outside. I think is a big mistake. I'm just not sure he's got that talent to play on the outside. Terrence Williams is what he is. He'll give you 1 or 2 games of a touchdown here and there, and not much else. So I think eventually it's going to come down to Hearns and Gallup as the 2 main guys, and whatever else they float underneath them.
I got to ask you a question. This is baffling to me, and it's a lot of times baffling. Like the whole Eli Manning thing we look at is always baffling, right? Eli Manning, he doesn't go in the top 12 quarterbacks picked, but yet we have Odell Beckham and Saquon Barkley going in the first round. Well, I got another question about the same thing. Russell Wilson goes off in the top 3 in every draft. Doug Baldwin's the number 1 guy. Doug Baldwin is dealing with a knee injury. What's your expectations with Doug Baldwin?
Well, of course, they're saying he's going to be ready for week 1. They've been adamant about that. He'll be ready for week 1. The good thing is he's been in practice running sprints, which is what you want to hear from somebody who's battling the injury he is. So I like that. Look, this guy is one of the best receivers in the league. We've seen it year after year. If he gets healthy and he's on the field by week 1, then I don't think we have an issue. And I'm definitely ready to roll with him because, let's face it, Russell Wilson, he's done good behind bad offensive lines before, and he's still going to have another bad one this year. If they get any kind of running out of Chris Carson, it's better than what they've had in the last couple of years. So I think, he'll be fine. I like Tyler Lockett back. I think he gives them another weapon on the outside that he can do some damage with if he can stay healthy. So, I like Doug Baldwin. I hope he's on the field week 1. But at this point, all we're doing is going by the coach saying he will be. And we know how much that coach loves to lie to us.
Yeah, so here's the problem. I've had Doug Baldwin on my team the last couple of years because Doug Baldwin was like the last number 1 wide receiver to go in decent offenses, right? Every year. He'd go in the 4th, 5th round, right? Get a little bargain for Dougie Baldwin. People never respected him. Now it seems like he's banged up. He's not on the field, and yet people are drafting him in the 3rd round. So I have no Dougie Baldwin here. This is the problem with drafting Dougie Baldwin this year.
Well, it's definitely a problem, and you got to be concerned about it. But I'm hoping he's back. I'm taking that chance. Most of these players, you got to take some risk with what you have, and you got to decide if that risk is worth it or not. Where he's going, if I get him as my wide receiver 2 now, I feel pretty comfortable. If he's my wide receiver 1, then I'm definitely trying to make sure I back him up with somebody I think is strong.
All right. Andrew Luck, he's come back. There's been mixed reviews by people on Andrew Luck. So I could ask you about Andrew Luck, but my real key is here. What's it done to T.Y. Hilton, and what's your impressions on what he'll do this year? And if you want to touch on Mr. Luck, go ahead. But first off, what has Andrew Luck's play so far in the preseason done for T.Y. Hilton?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Let's face it. We have yet to see Andrew Luck go deep in any of these games. We haven't seen him open up that arm at all. Now, to me, I would make sure he doesn't open up that arm at this point. Really no need to stretch that. He's trying to get back to a game feel. He's trying to get hit a few times and know he can get back up, and we've seen him do that. But I hope in this next game, in this preseason game number 3, that's supposed to be the big game for them to get ready for the real season, I hope we see him actually try to go down the field once or twice. It would make people feel better with his arm strength and not have as much concern. But the fact that he's on the field and playing, I'm pretty sure the team feels comfortable with where he is. And these 2 guys, Hilton and Luck, go hand in hand. If Luck is healthy, then Hilton's going to have a good year. If Luck isn't healthy, then Hilton's going to go right down the crapper again with Brissett.
I totally agree with you. I think that basically if Luck's there and he's healthy, he's a 2nd-round pick. If Luck isn't there, he's a 5th-round pick. And I think that's huge difference.
Well, not Luck. You're talking about Hilton.
Yeah. And here's all I've seen from Luck so far. I've seen a guy that's slow, and I've seen a guy that's deliberate. And maybe he's just being careful, and maybe he's just fighting his way back. Hilton, and I would.
We lost that last section. Say it again.
Yeah, I would never consider taking Andrew Luck, but based on what I've seen on Andrew Luck, it's hard for me to take T.Y. Hilton in round 2, 3, and maybe even 4.
Nah, I'd take him in the 4th all day. Look, I think Luck's going to be fine. I think they're taking it easy with him. He's taking it easy. He wants to get back to feeling like he's in the game. He was out of it for 2 years, so he's trying to break himself back in without really forcing anything. I think once Hilton's on that field, I think then we see him start to go deep again. We see him start to air it out. And then at that point, everybody's going to feel a lot safer with him.
Jim, this is the point of the show where I'm going to go on a limb, and I'm going to have people ridicule me on Twitter, ridicule me on Facebook, because I'm going to insult a guy that they love. Jim, I'm going to ask you, but I'll answer it first. Who is the one player that you feel that won't live up to ADP about where they're being drafted? And my guy is a guy that everybody loves in the fantasy community. And that is the Minnesota Vikings running back Dalvin Cook. The one thing I'm saying about Dalvin Cook is they got a good offensive line in Minnesota. They have an opportunity for a good running game. But the one thing that's consistent with Dalvin Cook is injuries and underachievement. He can have all the talent in the world, Jim, but I don't care what line of work you work in, whether you sell insurance, whether you work at a bank, where you're an NFL running back. If you don't go to work, you're not any good. Dalvin Cook had injuries at Florida State. Dalvin Cook comes to the NFL and has injuries. Dalvin Cook has not played in the preseason. Dalvin Cook got going to the 2nd round in drafts. Dalvin Cook is the most overrated player in fantasy football today.
Ooh, I like your conviction. I think you're totally wrong. I like Cook. I'll grab Cook. He didn't give us much last year with only the 4 games, but in those 4 games, he showed us what he's capable of. I think he's definitely capable of putting up top-tier numbers, and I've gone even so far as to grab him at the end of the 1st round. I think he is a guy that could put up monster numbers. Sure, the injury history is there, no doubt about it. But nowadays, he had that injury so long ago, and they're so good at fixing the ACLs nowadays that he's fine. He doesn't even need to wear a sleeve on his knee. He's looked great in camp. All of the beat writers, all of the coaches, even onlookers that aren't really with anybody were saying how good this kid looked, how sharp he moved. I'm buying in him. I like him in this offense. I think there's plenty of times where the defense is going to have to shut down opposing offenses. They're going to run the football a lot. I think Cook gets plenty of chances in this. I know they're talking about splitting carries with Latavius Murray, but this is a team that ran the ball 450 times last year. There's plenty to go around.
I mean, everything you say is right. The guy has all the talent in the world. It's just the ability to stay on the field and stay healthy and show that he's a professional and he goes out there and plays every week. The Latavius Murray thing, though, is interesting because I don't believe they'll split carries. I believe that if Cook's healthy, Cook gets at least 3 to 1, 4 to 1 in the amount of carries to Latavius Murray. But it's out there, and doesn't that make you guys think that why would I take a risk with the injuries and with another capable back there in Minnesota?
Because he's one of the few backs, those two are one of the few handcuff systems in this league I actually like this year. You can get Murray late enough that it doesn't really cost you a lot to handcuff him to Cook. And we saw what he could do last year when Cook went down. Murray had a good finish to the season, looked strong doing it. He looked good in the preseason outside of putting the ball on the rug a couple of times. But I think that's him just fighting for more, fighting to try and get more playing time. So I like them both. And that's the thing. I love the fact that I can get the handcuff to Cook at such a reasonable rate. He doesn't cost me much of anything. And I don't have to, forego another starter somewhere to get a handcuff, which I hate to do. So, I like that chance. I'm going to take that chance every day because, again, I've seen what this kid can do. Sure, he has the injuries, but everybody has the injuries. Nobody saw David Johnson's injury coming. coming last year. It just happens. It happens across the board to some people. It doesn't happen to others. Nobody saw ODB getting injured last year. Just the way it goes down sometimes. And I try not to let that really seriously influence somebody I think has a chance at both opportunity and talent.
Jim, got to ask you before I move on to a guy we talk about on every show. What's your thoughts on the Minnesota offense this year? You're bringing Kirk Cousins at the quarterback. You got two young receivers that look like they're going to be guys on the rise, and Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. But you have all these running backs, and you mentioned they ran the ball 425 times last year. So based on all of that, are Diggs and Thielen overrated, or are they going where they should be in fantasy football?
I think Diggs and Thielen will be fine. They ran the ball that many times last year, and both of those guys put up monster numbers. I don't see that changing with Cousins. I think Cousins is an upgrade in quarterback, although I like Keenan, but I think Cousins is an upgrade. I think we also have Kyle Rudolph there as a solid tight end, especially in the red zone. But I think all of these guys are fantasy viable. I think these guys are going to produce for you. And I think this offense is going to put up a lot of points.
One of the things that we talk about a lot in fantasy football is dynasty leagues. And dynasty league owners have been dealing with this disaster for 4 or 5 years now. Josh Gordon, the Cleveland Browns wide receiver. According to Hugh Jackson, Josh Gordon will return to practicing very soon. I don't know what that means. I don't know how much I can rely on Hugh Jackson. Where are you on Josh Gordon?
Well, hey, look, I hope he's back. I hope he's on the field for 16 games because you're talking about a kid who's got top 5 talent. We've seen it. We know it. He's just a freak of nature when it comes to athletic ability. Unfortunately, that head just has a lot of other things going on. The way I look at it this year, it really comes down to risk or reward. If you have 2 solid starters ahead of him, I don't mind taking him as a wide receiver 3 as long as I have 2 studs ahead of him. If I have to take him as my wide receiver 2, then I'm a little hesitant because at that point, at wide receiver 2, I really want to have somebody I think I can count on. And you just can't count on Josh Gordon. There's so much going on here beneath the lines that we're not seeing that just scares me a little bit. I'm not saying don't take a chance on him, but the fact that you got to grab him in the 4th round is a little scary to me.
Having Josh Gordon out for preseason, not knowing his status, does this improve Jarvis Landry's draft stock in your mind?
No, but I had him high to begin with. I like Jarvis Landry. I think he's an Odell Beckham type talent. People just keep putting him down. Look what he did in Miami with Ryan Tannehill throwing him the ball. Come on, that's ridiculous. Ryan Tannehill is probably one of the worst QBs in the league. There's not much of his game that I really like. And the fact that Jarvis Landry was able to do what he did with him, I think just shows how much of a talent this kid is. I know he's bringing in Tyrod Taylor, however you want to pronounce it. I don't care. But I like Taylor too. I think Taylor brings a lot more to this offense than they've had before. And I expect him to have a solid year. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. People think he doesn't throw very well. I think that's wrong. I just don't think he had the weapons in Buffalo that he really needed to do what he wanted to do. I think all of a sudden this team has weapons, especially if Gordon's on the field. And then I think that Taylor is going to put up a solid season. I'm not saying quarterback 1 type numbers, but I definitely think he's going to be in the middle of the quarterback 2 tier.
You know what's interesting? Christian McCaffrey seems to be going up draft boards each and every time. And I think back to a couple of years ago where Mike Evans went from the 2nd round to about the 7th pick in the draft. If you're in a PPR league, would you go Dalvin Cook over Christian McCaffrey?
Well, actually, in 2 recent money drafts I just did, I actually got Dalvin Cook at the 110 and then came around and got McCaffrey in the 2nd round. And I love that start. I'll take those 2 any day as my top 2 running backs. Again, in PPR leagues, pretty much all I play, guys. So when I talk, I'm talking PPR. I take those 2 guys any day in a PPR league, and I love that fact. Look, Christian McCaffrey, he's got the coaches. The coaches love what he does. Yeah. They're going to give him as much chance as he can. The only thing that's going to take him down is injury. Could that happen? Absolutely. Am I worried about it? Not at all.
I'm going to elaborate on Jim's situation there. Jim, I'm with you. The only thing I would have done different, I would have took Fournette over Cook and got McCaffrey as my second back.
See, but now you're talking. You're worried about injury history with Cook. You still have injury history with Fournette. That ankle, that's been problematic for him for a while now.
I know.
So you still have the same issue.
Yeah, I look at the Jacksonville off. And I'll give you the difference. And it's probably splitting hairs. I look at the Jacksonville offense as run heavy. And I look at the Minnesota, and you mentioned the 400-plus carries they had last year, but they still have two stud wide receivers. They bring in a quarterback that's a better thrower, where Jacksonville tries to hide their quarterback and let go of their best wide receiver, and Jacksonville improved the offensive line. And maybe I'm splitting hairs, but that's why I lean towards Fournette over Cook.
No, I get it. A lot of people like Fournette. I'm not saying anything bad about him. I just, in my mind, I think Cook is better, and I'm taking a chance on him. I have shares of Fournette. But I am a little worried about the ankle. Yeah. I don't like the fact that they're saying they're going to get him more involved in third downs. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a good thing, but I also think that the more he touches the ball, the more chance he has of that angle coming back and biting him in the butt.
I don't believe him, and they definitely are saying that, but I don't believe him because T.J. Yeldon has prospered in that role.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's done a good job for them already, so I don't see any reason to get away from that now.
I got to ask you one last question. It might be kind of controversial, but we have a president that's controversial every day, so a fantasy football show could certainly be controversial. Is Christian McCaffrey the best white running back since Merrill Hodge?
He may very well be. He's got all the talent in the world, and if he can stand up to being a 280, 275 touch running back, then I think this kid's, next year we're going to be talking about him in the top 5.
Here's the problem, Jim. I'm going to let people know how old we are. He might be the best white running back since Rocky Blyer.
Wow. I don't know. I'm having a hard time conceptualizing that, but again, Rocky Blyer was a damn good running back.
Or you want to go Gino Cappelletti?
Oh my God! Now you're really showing our age. Cut it out. Hey, just because my beard is gray doesn't mean I'm old.
That's right. Right. That's all right. And so Christian McCaffrey, it's going to be really interesting because I think it's so crazy when you watch the games, right? To see this guy out there, he looks like a Pop Warner player based on the size of him compared to these other guys on the field with him.
Yeah, no, but we've seen guys that size do it before. I've said this before. Ahmad Bradshaw was about the same size, and look what he did. Sometimes it's not about the size, it's about the heart. And the one thing we've seen from McCaffrey is he's got plenty of heart.
I got to be honest, Jim. I've been telling women for 20 years it's not all about the size.
Well, I didn't have to tell him. I just showed him.
The New York Jets, of course, have been in the news a lot lately with the quarterback situation. But to me, the play is the running back situation. In every draft I'm in, Isaiah Crowell continues to fall. How do we feel about this running back situation in the Jets? Is it Isaiah Crowell's job to lose, which that's how I feel. But you have a couple guys like Bilal Powell that have been around there and have been okay. What's your thoughts on this running back situation?
Oh, no, it's Crowell's job to lose. He's definitely going to be the starter in my mind. He's going to be the early down back. I think he'll be the goal line back. Bilal Powell will probably be the third down back and do what he does in the passing game. And, he did pretty well as their starter last year, basically starter because Matt Forte was nothing. But I think Crowell is the guy there. And, like you said, he's dropping in drafts. I saw him go in the 10th round in a draft just yesterday. And I'll take that shot at a starting running back in the 10th round. I'll take that shot any day.
I got to ask you, Jim, are people still drafting D.D. Westbrook? Because I'm going to tell you what the scuttlebutt in Jacksonville is. I said it last year when everyone was drafting D.D. Westbrook was like, you know what? I don't know why, and I don't know anything about this guy, but in Jacksonville, they love Keelan Cole. That continues to be the theme this year. And, of course, you have Marquise Lee. But the guy that people are talking about is DJ Chark. So do we still be drafting DJ Westbrook, or what's going on here?
Well, it's tough. And, they also brought in Dante Moncrief, who a lot of people think is the guy that should be the true number one, although he is definitely not shown it so far in training camp. He has not been that guy. But a lot of people thought that he would become that number one for them. He's got that kind of talent. Again, just not showing up yet. Hopefully that turns around. But this is another situation where it's tough to know how they're going to go. Just like with Dallas wide receiver, we just don't know who they're going to favor, who they're going to use, and how. We haven't seen enough of them yet. Hopefully this third preseason game, starts to shed some light on these type of groups that we're not sure of, and give us some kind of I don't know if you could say diehard rule of how they're going to be used, but at least some kind of basis.
I got to be honest. It's interesting. The third preseason game, I seen today that Tom Brady might play 3 quarters in this game. The New England wide receiver situation, of course, Julian Edelman out for the first 4 games. They cut Kenny Britt today. I've moved Chris Hogan up my draft boards. How are you handling the New England passing situation?
Well, you have to move Chris Hogan up because right now he's the only viable guy outside of Gronkowski. Yeah, he's the only guy outside of Gronkowski. I mean, basically after him, like you said, Edelman with the 4-week suspension, we're missing him. Hogan is the number one. Then you got Dorsett. You got Decker, who has looked like crap since they brought him on, dropping balls left and right, something he didn't do before. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Cordarrelle Patterson, I've taken some late round flyers on him in best ball leagues because, I think he'll give us a 3, maybe 4 solid games where he scores a touchdown and has maybe 70 yards, and that should be enough to get him in the starting lineup. So I've taken him late in a few of these things. Look, he's always been a big play person. It just hasn't been enough. Maybe we see that from the Patriots, but this is why the talk is out there that maybe they're going after Des Bryant, is because really after that they have nothing. McCarron, they got Lucien, Braxton Berrios, Paul Turner. These guys are nothing. These guys are not anybody you want to see on the field. My take on all this is because one of the things we did here today was that Green Bay was shopping Randall Cobb. So why not Randall Cobb to the Patriots? I think the Patriots could make good use of Cobb while he's on the field.
Definitely the first 4 weeks, Cobb would fit into that situation for Edelman really well, keep Hogan on the outside and give them some reception. So that will be there. I have definitely moved up the aggressiveness on Chris Hogan. I thought Kenny Britt would make the team, and I'm surprised at the way they've gone about the wide receivers so early in this preseason. Of course, week 3 fantasy football is where we get to see all the starters get out there and play. But, Jim, when you talk fantasy football and you talk starters, nobody's more reliable than Jim Day. So, Jim, where can people check you out each and every day?
Every day, Fantasy Football Frenzy podcast on YouTube on the Fantasy Sports Network. And then, of course, we have the What the Fuck WTF Fantasy podcast on Wednesday nights. Starting in week 1 of the NFL season, I'll be on the Fantasy Sports Network every Sunday night at 9 o'clock with Scott the King Engel doing a 2-hour recap show. And maybe even some Sunday morning stuff. And, of course, you can find me at Fighting Chance Fantasy, putting up some articles there, doing some other stuff there. So come check us out.
Now, I worked with Engel for a while in my career, and I got to ask you a question. How do you feel about a guy that gets aroused by men in makeup and leather?
Hey, well, I used to be a very big Kiss fan as well, so I'm pretty okay with that. I like Scott. I like Scott a lot. He's a funny guy. He makes me laugh. I'm pretty sure we're going to have an entertaining show, to say the least, on Sunday nights. By that time, I'll probably have 1 or 2 in me when we start talking about football. And then all I need is, Scott to give me one of those, he said, Paul.
The funny thing is, when you said, I like Kiss as well, Well, it's one thing to like Kiss. It's another thing to have statues all around your one-bedroom apartment of Kiss figures.
Well, hey, you know what? He's good friends with Ace Frehley, so I don't begrudge the man having somebody to like and enjoy, and if that's what floats his boat, good for him.
No, Ace doesn't know they're friends. Scott, it's Jim Day, Tony Cincotta. Make sure you tune in Sunday nights during the football season because those two guys will be great. And if the Seahawks lose, I'm going to call every week and let the king remind him of that. And he'll have some insane excuse about it. So fantasy football is where you want to talk trash. You want to talk about football. We've got plenty of ways for you to do it. Jim, another successful show. I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. Maybe one of these weeks we'll bring on a guest or two and get some other conversation going.
Can we bring on a female guest? Do you know any female guests?
I do, absolutely. I work with one. Casey Kasem writes for us over at Fighting Chance Fantasy. I'd love to get her on.
Oh, Chris Ventura?
Now, be nice.
No, I love Ventura. Ventura's a crazy dude. He's getting it done. So absolutely get it done. I love all those guys back in the time in the Fantasy Sports Network. We had a lot of fun there, and they know if I don't bust their balls, that means they're irrelevant.
Yeah, really. So I get that. I get that. I understand how that works in this industry.
Great stuff, guys. WTF Fantasy Football. We'll see you next week. Week 3 is a big week. We get a lot of starters playing. The only thing you hope for is that you've already drafted that none of your players get hurt, because this is the week that you got to be careful of it, because these guys play this week, Jim. No one will play in week 4.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. We'll see all the people that are fighting for that last roster spot in week 4. So thanks, Tony. It's been a great week 3, episode 3. I'm looking forward to many more.
For all the Japanese fans, sayonara.